Kalos has always felt different from the moment you first arrive. The air itself seems warmer. It's a region built on symmetry and beauty, where every stone and riverbank feels like it was placed with purpose. Long before its trainers began to study battles or evolution, Kalos was a land that worshipped light, sunlight glinting through stained glass, reflections dancing across water, the soft glow of lanterns that turned every night into something calm and golden. The developers designed the region's palette to mimic the tones of a late summer evening, where even the shadows look warm. That sense of peace defines Kalos, a place where history and imagination intertwine. The capital city, Lumios, sits like a glowing heart at the center of the region. Its circular design was based on a combination of Parisian architecture and the internal structure of a clock, a symbol of balance and timelessness. Every street radiating outward from Prism Tower was meant to represent one of the bonds between people and Pokémon. If you stand at the tower's base and spin slowly, the lights of the city blur into a halo. That visual was intentionally programmed to shimmer, reflecting how Kalos was built on the idea of beauty through imperfection, a city that feels alive, not polished. Long before Lumios became a hub of science, it was a city of art. The go-go taxis that wind through its avenues were modeled after early Parisian horse carriages, a way to keep tradition alive even in a modern setting. The cafes scattered across the city hide their own secrets. Their menus change slightly depending on the season, and the background conversations are coded differently in each one to make them sound distinct, even though most players never notice. Game Freak's artist referred to these touches as living details, quiet signals that the city breathes even when you're not there. The Kalos region's shape mirrors that of France, but its climate is intentionally exaggerated. The south feels almost Mediterranean, with wild lavender fields that sway like ocean waves, while the north evokes a colder, alpine tone where snow catches the sunset like glass. The transition between these areas isn't random. It represents the emotional flow of the player's journey, from excitement in the warm south to introspection in the cool north. Each route was color mapped to follow this pattern, using hues that subtly darken as you progress toward Snowbell. The result is a subconscious feeling of growth and calm closure by the time the adventure ends. One of the earliest Pokémon most players remember encountering is Fletchling, the small bird with a cry that was recorded from an actual finch's song. The developers slowed it by 30%, giving it a more soothing, melodic tone. That decision was one of the first steps in defining Kalos' soundscape, a region where nature doesn't roar or echo, but hums gently beneath the surface. This was further reflected in the ambient tracks for routes like the Connecting Forest, where the background wind sounds were mixed from real field recordings taken in rural France. Beneath Kalos' peaceful exterior lies a story of energy and consequence. Long ago, a king named AZ built a weapon that drew upon the life force of Pokémon. When the war ended, that same energy scattered across the land, crystallizing into what would become the Mega Stones. These fragments of light and sorrow became the region's greatest mystery, a reminder that power, even born from grief, can evolve into creation. The concept of mega evolution was designed not as a gimmick, but as a metaphor for human emotion, the ability to reach one's full potential through connection, not control. Lucario was chosen as the first Pokémon to showcase this mechanic, not just because of its popularity, but because it already represented aura and spiritual resonance. When it mega evolves, the lines along its fur pulse faintly to the rhythm of its heartbeat, a detail visible if you slow the animation frame by frame. The art team intentionally gave its design a sense of controlled chaos, as though the energy might burst at any moment, but never quite does. That balance mirrors Kalos itself, a region always walking the line between elegance and intensity. Many of the Pokemon native to Kalos were designed to embody French culture in subtle ways. Furfrou, for instance, draws inspiration from French poodles and the country's obsession with fashion. Each of its trims was based on an era of European styling, from classical aristocracy to modern couture. The game even includes a hidden animation where the groomer pauses to admire the cut, a quiet nod to the pride of craft. Likewise, Flabébé was created to symbolize France's floral tradition. It clings to a single bloom, not just for battle, but as a representation of devotion, echoing the French sentiment that beauty fades, but loyalty endures. The city of Chaleur became the philosophical core of Mega Evolution. Within its Tower of Mastery, the spiraling staircase represents ascension through trust. If you count the steps as you climb, there are exactly 151, an homage to the original number of Pokemon, meant to connect the present to the past. The old man who teaches the Mega Ring ceremony speaks in rhythmic pauses, coded intentionally offbeat to feel like an incantation. When the ceremony ends, the background music resolves to a major key, a soft signal that harmony has been restored between trainer and partner. Outside the cities, Kalos's countryside carries layers of memory. In the reflection caves, the shimmering light patterns on the floor are generated from the same code as Lumios's street reflections, implying that the same energy flows beneath both. The stones scattered across Route 10 are modeled after the megaliths of Karnak in France, each one positioned according to constellations visible during the real-world summer solstice. When the player walks through them, the camera tilts slightly upward to evoke reverence, as though the world itself is looking back. The Pokemon of Kalos were designed with symmetry in mind. Sylveon, with its pastel ribbons, was meant to contrast sharply against the region's sharp-edged architecture. Its typing as fairy represented the region's embrace of lightness, grace, and emotional strength. The ribbon's motion was animated with real silk physics, and the color gradient between pink and blue was calculated to stay within a comfort hue range, shades proven to lower visual tension. Sylveon's design, much like the region it represents, was meant to calm you without realizing why. Greninja's creation, on the other hand, came from the idea of hidden intensity. Its tongue scarf design was debated for months, but the director insisted it symbolized silence and control. Its movements were animated at a lower frame rate than most Pokemon, making them appear smoother, like the cuts of a practiced fighter. The splash effect on its water shuriken attack was recorded from actual droplets hitting steel, then digitally reversed, so the water seems to fold inward rather than explode outward, a detail meant to make the move feel more focused than destructive. Many Kalos Pokemon share a recurring motif of duality, light and shadow, beauty and loss. Aegislash embodies this perfectly. It is both weapon and protector, both history and ghost. Its blade glows faintly gold when attacking, but the glow's pulse rate mirrors that of a human heartbeat. This synchronization was an artistic choice meant to make players feel subconsciously connected to it, as though the sword itself remembers every warrior who once held it. Even the simplest of creatures carry deep meaning. Carbink, found in the luminous caverns, was designed as a spiritual cousin to Diancie, representing unfulfilled potential, a gem that could never quite crystallize. The sparkle effect around its body uses the same particle system as mega evolution, implying a connection between natural beauty and artificial transformation. Diance's own megaform was drawn to resemble an expanding diamond under pressure, a poetic metaphor for grace born from struggle. The Kalos League reflects the culmination of all these ideas. Its architecture was modeled after Gothic cathedrals, with pointed arches and radiant stained glass. Each Elite Four chamber uses a different natural element: flame, steel, water, and dragon, but their designs follow a shared symmetry, a circular center surrounded by open air. The idea was to make each battle feel like a ceremony rather than a conflict, emphasizing dignity over domination. Even the music swells gently instead of thundering, allowing the player to feel calm, not rushed. The Victory Road of Kalos hides its own quiet secrets. The torchlit halls were inspired by the catacombs beneath Paris, with bones replaced by ancient stones to avoid dark imagery while retaining solemn atmosphere. Some of the rock textures contain faint carvings of circles and triangles, referencing the same energy symbols seen in Lyssandra's laboratories, suggesting that the ancient and modern share one origin. This connection was deliberate, symbolizing that every discovery in Kalos comes with history attached. The lore of the region suggests that when the ultimate weapon fired, it forever changed the land's ecosystem. The lushness of Kalos's fields, the abundance of floral Pokémon, and the warmth of its light are all remnants of that event. The soil was said to have absorbed the life force of countless Pokémon, transforming it into eternal fertility. The developers used this as justification for the region's unusually colorful palette and abundance of grass-type species, beauty born from tragedy. Even the post-game areas hold hidden storytelling. The Battle Maison's elegant design was inspired by Versailles, with symmetrical fountains and reflective floors that mirror the player's steps. The battle attendants were deliberately animated, with slower, more graceful movements than those in previous facilities, reflecting the theme of mastery through composure. In interviews, the designers explained that Kalos's endgame was never meant to feel like pressure. It was meant to feel like reflection, a graceful dance rather than a test. And far beyond all of this, deep beneath Terminus Cave, lies a creature that embodies the region's balance, Zygarde. It represents order, watching silently as the world rebuilds itself again and again. In the original games, the pulse animation of its core glows in rhythm with the region's ambient wind cycle, symbolizing that Kalos and Zygarde share one heartbeat. Its dormant state isn't death, it's meditation, waiting for imbalance to call it awake once more. Kalos ends as it begins, with light. The credits of Pokemon X and Y show scenes of people and Pokemon living quietly together, cafes reopening, forests regrowing, and children laughing beneath prism reflections. The camera lingers on Lumiose as night falls, each window flickering on like a star. That final image is the region's truest statement that even after conflict, the world keeps shining. When traveling through Kalos, it's easy to overlook how deeply the region's routes tell stories of emotion rather than geography. The early roads are bathed in bright colors and gentle music, while later areas grow colder and quieter. Route 6, leading to Parfum Palace, was deliberately composed in a waltz rhythm, matching the rustling of the hedges as you walk. The camera angles in this area shift subtly to mimic the perspective of someone moving through a painting, a nod to the French tradition of framing natural beauty like art. Even the palace itself, with its golden corridors and quiet fountains, was designed to feel slightly too large, symbolizing the excess of a world that once valued beauty over empathy. Parfum Palace houses one of the region's earliest examples of social commentary. The noble who demands payment to retrieve his furfrou represents the selfishness that once divided people and Pokémon during the ancient war. This contrast, luxury above, conflict below, runs throughout Kalos's design. Every elegant surface hides a story of cost. The palace's chandeliers, for example, each contain exactly 250 crystals, a number chosen to represent the total species count of Kalos's regional Pokédex. The designers referred to this as symmetry of souls, where even decoration echoes life. As you move deeper into the region, you start to notice how each gym reflects a different philosophy of evolution. Viola's gym, filled with webs and light, represents creativity. Grant's climbing walls symbolize perseverance. Karina's roller skating arena celebrates motion and freedom, while Ramos's garden teaches patience and growth. Clement's electric gym mirrors intellect and invention, and Valerie's mirrors show reflection in both literal and emotional form. Olympia's star-filled dome evokes vision and acceptance, while Wulfric's frozen gym closes the journey with stillness, understanding through calm. Together, the gyms form an emotional cycle that mirrors the stages of growth rather than just a test of skill. In Shalor City, where Mega Evolution was first explained, there's a small mural hidden behind the Tower of Mastery that shows a circle of hands surrounding a glowing stone. The translation reads, "Power shared is power returned." This phrase inspired much of Kalos's thematic direction, that strength without connection leads to ruin. The inscription glows faintly at night in the game's files, though this feature was disabled in the final release due to lighting constraints. Still, it remains one of the many quiet secrets left beneath the surface. Many of Kalos's Pokémon designs were born from the idea of transformation. Vivillon, with its regional wing patterns, was designed to symbolize diversity, not of species, but of experience. Its wing coloration changes based on the player's real-world location, making it a literal bridge between imagination and geography. The programmers used a geolocation-based seed algorithm, meaning no two wings are truly identical. The decision was poetic and technical at once, a Pokémon shaped by the Earth itself. Another Pokémon that embodies Kalos's artistic spirit is Goodra. Its gooey form and gentle nature were chosen to contrast with the aggressive dragons of previous generations. The director described it as a creature that wins without wanting to fight. Its tears, seen in Pokédex entries, are coated with a unique shimmer effect that refracts surrounding light, a way to make even sadness appear beautiful. In this, Goodra became the emotional core of Kalos's design philosophy, softness as strength. Halucha, inspired by Mexican wrestling culture, may seem out of place in a French-inspired region, but its inclusion was deliberate. The design team wanted Kalos to represent global unity, a region built on admiration for other cultures. Halucha's color palette of red, green, and white mirrors not only its homeland's flag, but also the themes of contrast and equilibrium that define Kalos. Its flying fighting dual type mirrors body and spirit, blending aerial grace with grounded discipline. Even the fossils of Kalos tell stories of harmony. Tyrant and Amora were based on the clash between strength and serenity. The T, Rex-like Tyrantrum, represents dominance, while the gentle Aurorus represents endurance. Their revival locations are placed side by side in Ambret Town, to suggest that the ancient world they came from was balanced by both power and peace. The light emitted from Aurorus's sails was animated using color curves inspired by the northern lights, a detail that makes its glow change hue with the environment, even indoors. Kalos's connection to the megastones extends far beyond lore. Every stone was placed in an area tied to its Pokemon's traits or history. Lucarionite rests near the Tower of Mastery, reflecting inner focus. Gardevoirite appears near romantic landscapes, mirroring elegance and emotional resonance. Ampharosite lies by the sea, its lighthouse form symbolizing connection across distance. Even the Blazikenite event, distributed globally, was chosen to represent Kalos's reach, how one region's energy could touch the entire world. The fairy typing, introduced alongside Kalos, was designed to balance the dominance of dragons and dark types. Its inspiration came from European folklore, creatures that used wit and charm to overcome brute strength. The development team studied color psychology and chose soft tones to make fairy-type moves visually gentle yet powerful. Moonblast, for instance, was animated to bloom like a flower, not explode like an attack. The intent was to make combat feel poetic rather than violent. There's a curious secret behind the region's Pokeball factory near Laver. Inside the game's code, there are unused files for custom Pokeball types that were never implemented, including one called the Bond Ball, meant to slightly increase friendship gains after battle. Its description read, "For those who fight not to win, but to understand." Though it never appeared in the final version, its message captures the essence of Kalos perfectly. In Lumio City's backstreets, there's a building known only as the Haunted Hotel. When you enter a certain room, the screen fades and a ghostly NPC appears behind you. She says, "You are not the one," and disappears. The developers later confirmed that this encounter was meant to represent the lingering sorrow of the war, spirits still searching for their loved ones lost centuries ago. This moment remains one of the quietest yet most haunting pieces of environmental storytelling in the series. The city's technology reflects Kalos's blend of science and emotion. Prism Tower's design was modeled after the Eiffel Tower, but with a biological twist. Its framework subtly resembles DNA strands, linking architecture to the region's recurring theme of evolution. The light atop the tower flashes in Morse code patterns that spell Kalos when viewed over several in-game nights, though the cycle is too slow to notice without time-lapse footage. Clement's inventions throughout Lumios were meant to teach children about curiosity. Each gadget he creates fails not because it's broken, but because it lacks empathy, a metaphor for intellect without compassion. When he finally understands this lesson, his gym puzzle resolves into a clean, geometric pattern that visually resembles an open heart. That subtle shift, easy to miss, shows how Kalos ties emotional growth into mechanical design. Snowbell City, the final badge location, was meant to symbolize forgiveness. The snow's soft glow, the music's slow rhythm, and the quiet residents all evoke peace after conflict. The bridge leading into the city is built from white wood, the same texture used in Parfum Palace's railings, suggesting that even those who once lived in excess have returned to simplicity. The gym itself, built of turning panels, represents perspective, how the world aligns when you understand it from all sides. In the post-game, the Looker missions expand Kalos's depth. Looker, an investigator from another land, arrives not to expose crime, but to understand humanity. His partnership with a young orphan named Emma shows compassion born from difference, an echo of the same themes that define Kalos's heart. The dialogue between them, particularly in the final scene at the cafe, is written in a rhythm that mirrors lullaby tempo, turning conversation into closure. The environmental design of Kalos was created using a system that calculated color contrast in real time based on lighting. That's why the sunsets shift so naturally and why caves feel softly lit rather than harsh. The development team used the region as a visual experiment, testing how the Nintendo 3DS hardware could portray atmosphere rather than spectacle. The result was a world that feels alive even when nothing moves, a region that breathes. And throughout it all, the music of Kalos ties everything together. Each town's theme is composed in a different time signature, representing diversity in unity. The piano motif of Vanillville Town returns in the champion theme, slowed to half speed, a musical way of saying that the journey's end is only the beginning remembered. Even the Pokemon Center theme includes faint harp tones in Kalos, turning a familiar melody into something tender. The more one listens, the more one realizes that Kalos isn't simply a region of beauty. It's a meditation on what beauty means, not perfection, but presence. The flowers bloom because the soil remembers loss. The towers shine because darkness once surrounded them. Every Pokemon, every person, every sound within Kalos whispers the same truth, that to exist in harmony is the highest form of strength. Kalos is a region built on reflection, not only in its shining lakes and polished cities, but in how its stories mirror the world that came before it. Every generation of Pokemon tells a tale of progress, but Kalos feels like the moment the world stopped to look back. Even its roots are designed like memories. They loop, curve, and reconnect in gentle patterns, suggesting that growth isn't a straight path but a spiral, a quiet return to what was once forgotten. The heart of Kalos's mythology begins in Geosenge Town, where massive stone menhirs pierce the earth in uneven circles. These stones mark the resting place of the ultimate weapon built 3,000 years ago, and they're positioned in exact alignment with the region's magnetic field. This wasn't random. Developers confirmed the layout follows a Fibonacci pattern, symbolizing the natural rhythm of life and death. When you walk among them, the faint sound of wind is layered with a low hum, a hidden bass note in the music meant to feel like the heartbeat of the earth beneath your feet. It's here that the story of AZ unfolds. He was once a king who could not bear to lose the Pokemon he loved, so he built a machine that could grant life again. The act ended the ancient war, but at an unbearable cost. The life that returned was not the same, and the energy that powered the weapon spread across the land, transforming the soil and reshaping time itself. In the Pokédex, this event is never fully explained. It lingers like a dream remembered too clearly. The developers described AZ as the embodiment of grief that learned to forgive, and his towering height was chosen to make him seem less human, as if sorrow had stretched him beyond mortal proportions. The Pokemon associated with that legend, Floette, carries petals that glow faintly even in darkness. Its form, known as the Eternal Flower, was modeled after the blue anemone, a bloom often used in memorials. In the game's files, the petals have a subtle color pulse synchronized with the Mega Evolution animation, implying a shared origin between love and power. Although the Eternal Flower Floette was never officially released to players, its presence remains as a symbol of empathy, a living echo of the price of peace. The deeper you travel through Kalos, the more you sense how energy itself is alive. Route 13 known for its constant wind, hides one of the most technical achievements of the region's design. The wind there isn't a random weather effect, it's a particle simulation that reacts to the player's movement and direction, meant to represent how the world responds to our presence. The idea was to make players feel that Kalos isn't static, but breathing in rhythm with them. The power plant nearby, with its enormous turbines, represents the modern continuation of AZ's energy legacy. Its red and blue lights flicker at regular intervals, coded to match the binary pattern for hope in Morse code. Few ever notice this, yet it reflects the region's obsession with turning history into art. Even its machines carry hidden poetry. Xerneas and Yveltal, the twin forces of life and destruction, embody Kalos's eternal balance. Their designs are opposites in every sense: curves against angles, blue against red, creation against entropy. Yet they share a single motif, the letter Y, within their silhouettes, representing the branching of life's possibilities. Xerneas's glowing horns were animated using actual bioluminescent jellyfish footage layered over particle systems, while Yveltal's wings use real falcon motion capture to mimic the speed of descent. Together, they illustrate the idea that every beginning carries its own ending, and every ending can seed a new beginning. The legendary Zygarde completes this trinity not as ruler, but as observer. Its many cells scattered across the land represent equilibrium, the silent harmony of ecosystems. Each green cell was placed in areas tied to natural restoration, like forests, caves, or ruins, implying that Zygarde's watchful presence is what keeps the region stable. The designers called it the heartbeat of the world, disguised as a Pokémon. In this way, Zygarde isn't a deity, but a guardian of quiet balance, ensuring that light and shadow never stray too far apart. In the heart of Kalos's wilderness lies the Pokémon Village, a refuge for abandoned and forgotten Pokémon. The concept was inspired by the legend of the Hidden Commune, a myth about a forest sanctuary where misunderstood creatures lived free of human judgment. The faint music that plays there is the same melody as the Lumiose Cafe theme, slowed to half speed, a subtle connection between civilization and compassion. Every detail in this area was crafted to evoke empathy, even for the unseen. Far to the south, the reflection caves and glittering grottos of Kalos hold their own secrets. The mirrors scattered through these caves reflect light differently, depending on the time of day, and some players noticed that their reflections distort slightly when standing near certain crystals. The code behind this feature uses a depth algorithm that measures how far the player is from truth, a hidden developer term referring to the center of the map. It's a small but meaningful illusion, implying that perception in Kalos is shaped by perspective. Even the most ordinary places in Kalos carry quiet stories. The Battle Chateau, with its royal decor, was designed to represent the nobility's obsession with titles. The trainers you fight there earn ranks like Duke and Baron, but no reward truly changes. The repetition itself is the point. It's a gentle critique of vanity disguised as elegance, a reminder that status without kindness is as hollow as an empty hall. The cafes that line the streets of Lumiose City all serve the same dishes, yet their dialogue changes with each visit. This isn't random. The game tracks your hidden friendship score with your Pokémon and adjusts the conversation slightly. Waiters begin to comment on your aura, speaking as though they can sense your bond. These micro details form part of Kalos's overarching message that connection exists in the smallest of interactions. One of the most overlooked facts about Kalos lies in its post-game friend Safari. Each friend's unique Pokemon type is determined not by luck, but by the date they first connected to your system. The value is generated using a formula tied to the system's internal clock, a poetic reminder that even friendship in the digital world is written in time. In Snowbell's forests, beneath layers of frost, the Pokemon Abomasnow can be found standing motionless among the trees. It isn't aggressive unless approached, symbolizing patience and endurance. Its mega evolution was designed to look like a blizzard condensed into form, not a storm of destruction, but a guardian of stillness. The glowing green hue around its body represents the warmth that can exist even in coldness, echoing Kalos's recurring lesson that beauty thrives in contrast. The developers spent months creating Kalos's water physics, determined to make reflections flow like glass. In areas like Route 8, the ocean's texture changes based on wind direction, moon phase, and cloud density. It's subtle enough to go unnoticed by most players, yet that care is what gives Kalos its tranquil soul. Every ripple, every light beam across the surface exists to lull you into peace. Even in battle, Kalos's calm persists. The animation timing of moves was altered slightly from earlier games. Frames were lengthened by small increments to make every motion feel smoother. This was especially true for fairy-type attacks, which linger on screen a fraction longer to emphasize grace. The idea wasn't to make combat more dramatic, but to make it feel alive and thoughtful, like a dance instead of a fight. At the Pokemon League, the champion Diantha embodies the region's philosophy. She isn't a conqueror, but a dreamer, an actress who understands transformation. Her team represents elegance, empathy, and evolution, with each member chosen to symbolize a facet of artistry. Gardevoir stands for emotional resonance, Gudra for compassion, and Hawlucha for freedom of expression. Even her battle theme was composed in waltz time, turning the climax into a performance rather than a duel. The message is simple. The greatest power in Kalos is grace. The endings of Pokemon X and Y close not with fireworks or speeches, but with silence. After the credits, a Z meets the player in a quiet square surrounded by trees. His floette descends from the sky, and for the first time in centuries, he smiles. This moment lasts only a few seconds, yet it carries the emotional weight of the entire story, forgiveness between man and Pokemon, and the healing that follows. The music fades, leaving only the sound of wind through leaves. It's the softest ending in Pokemon's history, and perhaps the most human. Kalos is a region that dreams while awake. Every sound, every color, every reflection feels intentional, a hymn to connection, beauty, and balance. And as you walk its roads, from the flower fields of Vanaville to the icy bridges of Snowbell, you carry with you its quiet truth, that growth is not about becoming more, but about remembering who you already are. When night falls across Kalos, the region transforms. The warm glow of Lumiose fades to silver reflections, and the quiet hum of its streets softens into a rhythm that feels almost alive. The stars above mirror the light below, blurring the line between sky and earth. The developers once said they wanted Kalos at night to feel like a living lullaby, not just darker, but calmer. The lighting engine simulates faint atmospheric dust, which makes the glow from street lamps linger in the air a fraction longer than in any previous region. That single change gave the city its dreamy tone, a world where technology hums in harmony with silence. Much of Kalos's design philosophy came from the question of connection, what it means for humans and Pokemon to grow together. Mega Evolution became the physical symbol of that question. Its process, first described by Professor Sycamore, is less about mutation and more about resonance. The stones and bracelets act as channels, but the power itself comes from the emotional frequency shared between trainer and Pokemon. During development, Game Freak staff even referred to the Mega Evolution Pulse as the heartbeat link. That connection is visualized in Lucario's glowing aura during Mega Evolution. The animation shows energy moving from the trainer's chest to the stone and then outward in concentric circles. If you slow the footage frame by frame, you can see faint heart-shaped ripples within the light, a hidden detail that matches Sycamore's description that the bond between partners is what completes the transformation. Even in something as visual as battle, Kalos insists on emotion. Not all experiments with Mega Evolution were so peaceful. Deep within Lysandre's laboratories, the scientists of Team Flare studied the weapon's residual energy, hoping to harness it for human immortality. The bright orange suits worn by the group weren't random. They were modeled after hazard gear used in radiation research, their color chosen to reflect both arrogance and warning. Lysandre himself was designed as a visual foil to Sycamore, both tall and refined, but where Sycamore's palette was blue and white for hope, Lysandre's red and gold represented decay through obsession. His Pokemon team reflected that same balance, tipping into excess. Pyroar, with its mane blazing like a crown, symbolized pride. Mienshao represented elegance without empathy, and his final ace, Gyarados, connected him to the legend of transformation gone wrong, a creature whose rage once turned it divine. The designers intended his red Gyarados to represent the cost of unchecked ambition, echoing the weapon that ended the ancient war. The laboratories themselves hide quiet lore. Behind one locked door in the Lysandre Cafe lies a computer file that reads Project Azoth. The name derives from the mythical alchemical solvent said to purify all things. It implies that Team Flare's pursuit wasn't destruction, but misguided cleansing, a twisted form of the region's obsession with beauty. The developers used this to mirror France's historical struggles between art and power, elegance and ego. Elsewhere, the ruins of Kalos tell stories in silence. The mysterious chambers scattered across the region are written in ancient runes that, when translated, form incomplete phrases. Life flows where love lingers, and from stone we rose. These fragments were meant to be remnants of a pre-war civilization that worshipped the energy now found in megastones. Though the meaning remains vague, the presence of the runes near crystal clusters suggests that early Kalos people believed in the divine nature of transformation long before science gave it form. Some Pokemon in Kalos echo these ancient beliefs. Carbink, for instance, is said to dwell deep within caverns, untouched by light, its gem-like body resonating with sound instead of sight. According to one early concept note, its crystalline form was meant to represent the first stage of life that would eventually become Diancie, not through evolution, but through emotional harmony. This ties into a scrapped side quest where a Carbink would slowly change color based on the player's friendship level with it. The idea was ultimately cut, but its concept lives on in Diancie's shimmering diamond body, symbolizing the beauty that forms under pressure. Even more mysterious is Hoopa, the mischievous ring-bearing Pokemon associated with the supernatural. Its rings, said to connect dimensions, are animated with a distinct golden flare that fades slower than any other light effect in the game. This was done intentionally to make the portals feel eternal, like windows that never fully close. Hoopa's design draws from Hindu and Middle Eastern myths of genies and trickster gods, a nod to the region's multicultural inspirations. Kalos, though modeled on France, was meant to feel like a crossroads of the entire Pokemon world, a place where legends meet and merge. In Anastar City, the sundial stands as one of the most beautiful and least understood monuments in Pokemon. Its crystalline arms align with the stars at midnight, and the glow that emanates from it follows the lunar cycle. The in-game light effect is actually influenced by your console's real-world clock, meaning it subtly shifts depending on the date. The lore suggests it channels cosmic energy related to mega evolution, connecting the heavens to the earth. The developers intended it as a spiritual successor to the Solaceon ruins and the Spear Pillar of Sinnoh, a bridge between myth and technology. The Pokemon Xerneas is said to sleep within the roots of a great tree in the wild forest north of Anastar. Its design, inspired by Norse mythology's Stag of Life, incorporates branching antlers that represent the Tree of Yggdrasil, the axis of existence. The glowing veins along its body pulse every 4 seconds, symbolizing the rhythm of life itself. Yveltal's design, conversely, mirrors a broken branch, an embodiment of decay's beauty. When it spreads its wings, the sound effect includes a reversed heartbeat, creating a faint echo of mortality. Kalos is full of these contrasts, beauty and tragedy intertwined so tightly that one cannot exist without the other. Take, for instance, the ghost-type Pokemon Phantump. Its Pokédex entry describes it as the spirit of a child lost in the forest. The haunting cry it makes in-game was created by layering reversed wind chimes with a distant flute, a melody that feels both familiar and unreachable. Yet, even in its sadness, the design conveys comfort. The idea behind Phantump wasn't horror, but acceptance, that memory can coexist with peace. Another Pokemon, Aegislash, represents the power of legacy. It chooses kings worthy of rule, but its presence also corrupts those who crave authority. In battle, its shifting stance symbolizes how power and vulnerability are intertwined. When it lowers its guard, its eye brightens, implying awareness rather than weakness. This duality was meant to mirror Kalos's central theme, the balance between heart and ambition. In contrast, Sylveon embodies purity and understanding. Its ribbons, extensions of its aura, read emotional wavelengths rather than intent. In early concept art, Sylveon's color palette was even softer, almost completely white, but the team added pastel tones to reflect warmth. The move Fairy Wind was crafted to be gentle, yet luminous, using real dust particle simulations to create the illusion of air carrying kindness. Every frame of its animation represents the region's devotion to grace. The environmental storytelling of Kalos extends even into its skies. The flying Pokemon of the region, like Talonflame, were coated with unique flight patterns. They don't just circle overhead, they dive and ascend based on wind speed and terrain. This makes the world feel alive, as if nature itself responds to your presence. The sky battles, though a niche feature, were designed to reflect humanity's dream of transcendence, fighting without grounding, striving without harm. The absence of ground types wasn't a limitation, it was philosophy. Few players ever noticed that the train station in Lumiose City contains a faint poster for an unseen destination labeled Kanto Express. It was a quiet tribute from the developers, suggesting that the world remains interconnected even beyond what we can explore. The flicker of its lights mimics the rhythm of the Poke Flute's melody, a reminder that music, not machinery, ties the regions together. Even the forests of Kalos are rich with intent. Santaloon Forest, though early in the game, mirrors Viridian Forest in its layout. It's a deliberate echo, showing that every new adventure is a continuation of the old. The light filtering through the trees shifts gently as you move, giving the illusion of time passing. The developers used procedural lighting for the first time here, meaning no two steps look exactly the same, a quiet metaphor for individuality within harmony. Deep beneath the calm beauty, the ruins of ancient Kalos still whisper. The energy that powered the ultimate weapon may have faded, but its presence lingers as warmth in the soil, light in the crystals, and music in the wind. The entire region hums softly, as if remembering, not in grief, but in gratitude. For Kalos, like the Pokemon who inhabit it, has learned that rebirth is not the erasure of the past, but its transformation into something peaceful. And so, when the final rays of sunset pass over Lumiose Tower and the cafes close their doors, the region exhales. The light along the avenues dims, and the river catches the last traces of gold. Somewhere in the distance, a go-goat sighs, the fountains ripple, and the wind hums through the old stones of Geosenge. The world of Kalos falls quiet, yet never truly sleeps. It merely dreams, waiting for dawn to bring its reflection back to life. After the main journey ends and the champion's crown fades into stillness, Kalos reveals its gentler side. The region doesn't rush you forward, it invites you to linger. The wind over Route 7 slows, the lakes shimmer in pastel tones, and the skies above Lumiose turn a faded lavender hue that was designed to evoke peace rather than victory. Even the postgame feels like reflection rather than continuation. The team at Game Freak wanted Kalos to feel alive after the story's end, a place that still breathes long after your final battle fades to silence. If you wander the coastal routes, you might find a curious pattern among the fishermen NPCs. Their dialogue subtly changes after you defeat the champion. Instead of boasting about big catches, they talk about gratitude, patience, and calm waters. These lines were added late in development, meant to show that the world continues to evolve emotionally alongside the player. It's one of those small, invisible touches that make Kalos feel like it's healing too. Ambret Town, nestled along the sea, hides one of the region's most fascinating bits of design philosophy. The fossils revived there, the sail fossil and jaw fossil, weren't placed randomly. They were meant to represent the duality of Kalos itself, serenity and power, art and ambition. The revival machines hum at a lower pitch than other sound effects in the lab, creating a meditative drone. In internal notes, the developers called this the heartbeat of the past. Each fossil was placed in the world as a reminder that life continues in new forms, and that even extinction can lead to rebirth. The Kalos region was the first to fully embrace three-dimensional space, but it also quietly experimented with emotion through sound. Every town theme was recorded with live instruments, not synthesized tones, giving the music a human warmth that earlier games lacked. The violin used in Coumarine City's theme was played by one of Game Freak's own staff members, the same musician who composed the lullaby-like flute tracks for Pokemon Channel over a decade earlier. That continuity of sound ties Kalos to Pokemon's long history of gentle storytelling. Kalos's forests are particularly rich in these quiet details. The rustling of leaves changes pitch depending on how fast you walk, simulating the sound of air pressure shifting around your movement. Santaloon Forest contains the most complex lighting system of any early game area at the time, with 12 different shades of green mapped to the canopy. It's designed to create the illusion that the forest is breathing, alive in both sound and color. The slow rhythm of its music, punctuated by soft chimes, mirrors the heartbeat tempo used in Lumiosa's nighttime score, a subtle connection between civilization and nature. Few players realize that Route 9, where you ride a Rhyhorn across rough terrain, was meant to be the region's emotional midpoint. The sound of stone grinding under its feet and the absence of background music were intended to make you feel the silence of ancient time. Rhyhorn itself, once a symbol of power, becomes a companion of reflection. In concept sketches, this sequence was titled Echoes of the Old Path, representing the bond between humanity and the creatures that carried them long before Pokeballs or battles existed. Kalos's narrative balance extends to its Pokemon as well. Gourgeist, with its softly glowing body and singing voice, embodies the idea of remembrance. Its cry is a blend of harp and voice samples tuned to sound like a lullaby, making it the first Pokemon to sing in its natural cry. The Pokédex entries describing how it escorts lost souls are framed not as horror, but as mercy, another sign of Kalos's gentleness toward the idea of death and memory. Even the spectral feels serene here. In contrast, Malamar represents the hypnotic side of beauty. Its hypnotic glow, swirling in shades of violet and indigo, was inspired by the movement of ink underwater. The developers used fluid dynamics to animate its body, making every frame feel alive and unpredictable. Its association with manipulation and mind control was meant as commentary on power, the darker reflection of Kalos's obsession with allure. Even evil here wears elegance like silk. A lesser-known secret lies in Kalode City, the quiet post-game hub where you meet your rival again. Its design mirrors Vanillville Town's layout almost exactly, symbolizing a return to where everything began. The music here is slower, with soft percussion barely audible under the main melody. When you battle your rival, the soundtrack swells gently but never fully rises, its victory disguised as nostalgia. Afterward, the dialogue you share subtly changes on repeat visits, showing growth without needing to declare it. It's one of the most understated endings in Pokemon history. Throughout Kalos, reflections serve as recurring imagery. Lakes, windows, polished stones all mirror light differently. This motif was intentional. The art team used reflection as a metaphor for empathy, the ability to see oneself in others. Even the reflective floors in the Pokemon League were chosen to evoke the feeling that every step you take echoes forever. The staff called this effect eternal footsteps. Laverre City stands apart as the heart of Kalos's mysticism. Built around a massive tree that glows faintly at night, it merges natural wonder with craftsmanship. The fairy gym, located inside the tree, features moving doll platforms and ribbons that sparkle like starlight. Each piece of decor was hand-painted digitally, a rare practice in modern games. The concept was handmade beauty, a deliberate rejection of industrial perfection. The fairy type itself was designed to reintroduce warmth to the Pokemon world, a reminder that compassion can be as powerful as strength. In one of the city's houses, an old woman gives the player a Poké doll and mentions a ghost that sometimes appears at night. This isn't just flavor text. Her dialogue changes if you visit after midnight. She speaks as though she's forgotten your previous meeting, hinting that she might not exist in the present at all. The ghost stories of Kalos, unlike those in earlier regions, are rarely meant to frighten. They exist to soften the line between life and memory, between what's gone and what remains. The reflection of Kalos's gentle tone can even be found in its move animations. When fairy-type moves were introduced, The team at Game Freak developed a new lighting algorithm to make attacks glow softly without blinding the player. Moonblast, for example, uses layered transparency rather than particle bursts, giving the illusion of energy blooming like a flower. The intent was to make every battle look like an art form rather than a display of aggression. There's a quiet truth behind Professor Sycamore's design, too. He was created to embody curiosity without control. A scientist who studies, not conquers, his long hair, unbuttoned collar, and warm smile were modeled after the archetype of an artist more than a researcher. The developers wanted him to feel like a mentor who encourages wonder rather than discipline. Even his theme music, played in waltz time, sounds more like a conversation than a lecture. One of Kalos's most hauntingly beautiful secrets hides beneath Lumiose City. In the back streets near the hotel district, a non-interactive elevator triggers a short scene where the lights flicker and a ghostly woman appears. She says, "No, you're not the one," and vanishes. Players speculated endlessly about her meaning, but the developers later revealed she represents a remnant of the energy from Aziz's weapon, a soul searching endlessly for the life it lost. It's a moment that turns the bustling city into a place of quiet tragedy, reminding you that even light casts long shadows. The region's concept of beauty carries into its wild Pokémon too. Florges, with its flowing petals, changes color based on the flower it nurtures, a feature designed to emphasize the bond between life and environment. In the code, its palette system is connected to the one used for Vivillon's wings, making the two Pokémon symbolically linked as expressions of diversity. Together, they form the visual heart of Kalos's theme, harmony through difference. Kalos's art direction was heavily influenced by real-world France, but its emotional tone came from something older, the universal longing for balance. Every town reflects this through sound, color, and architecture. Coumarine City, for instance, uses the same type of seaweed-inspired tiles as the ones in Ambrette's aquarium, showing that even distant places in the region share design DNA. It's a visual whisper that everything is connected. The region's name, Kalos, comes from the Greek word for beauty, but the developers interpreted beauty not as vanity, but as sincerity. In one interview, they said Kalos was built to teach peace through aesthetics. That's why even its battles feel serene, and its villains speak like philosophers. The game wanted to slow the player's heartbeat, not raise it. And when you finally leave Kalos, when you fly over the glimmering coastlines and see the mountains dissolve into haze, you realize its magic never came from spectacle or story. It came from stillness, from the quiet between the music notes. Kalos is not a region you conquer, it's a dream you visit, and in that dream, beauty and peace are one and the same. Kalos was built like a story that never quite ends. Its maps spiral instead of stopping, its towns echo each other's colors, and its people speak in reflections. Every line of dialogue, every angle of light, carries meaning if you slow down enough to see it. The developers described the region as a place where every road should feel like a thought. It's why no path in Kalos feels wasted. Each one curves gently towards something beautiful, even if you never realize why. In Lumiose City, that philosophy shines brightest. Beneath the noise and glow lies a network of unmarked alleys, their geometry inspired by real districts of Paris that evolved over centuries without planning. The team used these to capture a feeling of organic imperfection. The pavement textures were hand-drawn from photos taken during midnight walks through Paris's narrow streets. If you pause long enough in these alleys, you'll hear faint accordion notes layered into the city's ambient soundscape, a secret reminder that even concrete can sing when you listen softly enough. The tower at the city's heart, Prism Tower, was designed as a symbol of living light. Its framework hides a subtle DNA spiral pattern linking human progress with nature's rhythm. The beacon at its peak doesn't just flash randomly. It follows a slow pulse timed to the in-game day-night cycle. The coding team called this pattern the breath of Kalos. They said the city should look like it was inhaling and exhaling with the sky. Far beyond Lumios, the wild edges of Kalos hold their own kinds of calm. The flower fields near Vanaville change color depending on the time of day, shifting from coral at dawn to lavender at dusk. These shades were mapped using real photographic references of Provence, but slightly brightened to evoke nostalgia rather than realism. Even the bees and butterflies that hover there follow looping flight paths based on Fibonacci spirals, a quiet nod to natural order repeating itself through beauty. Every Pokemon that lives in Kalos feels touched by artistry. Delphox, for instance, was designed as a fusion between a sorcerer and an oracle. Its long cloak-like fur was animated to move independently from its body, giving the illusion that it floats when still. The fire on its wand doesn't flicker, it dances in sine wave motion to represent meditation. Its lore about reading flames to see the future ties directly to the region's fascination with insight, power that looks inward rather than outward. Chestnut, the defensive counterpart to Delphox's mysticism, carries armor patterned after medieval French knights. Each spike was sculpted to curve inward, forming the shape of a closed flower bud, a visual metaphor for protection through restraint. The move Spiky Shield was intentionally programmed to sound like cracking wood instead of metal, grounding its strength in nature rather than war. And between these two stands Greninja, whose silent presence balances the trio. Its sleek, water-woven design embodies stillness in motion, the calm that precedes understanding. The mega evolutions that define Kalos' era each tell a story about connection. Gardevoir's gown expands into a constellation pattern, symbolizing emotional transcendence. Blaziken's flames rise against gravity, shaped by heartbeats. Ampharos gains flowing hair, not as vanity, but as a literal light conductor. Its mane channels energy outward in graceful arcs. The developers explained that each megaform represents a reflection of the bond amplified through trust. Even the most battle-focused transformations were meant to feel like art rather than aggression. There's a quiet elegance to the way Kalos handles history. The ancient weapon buried beneath Geosenge isn't shown directly, only its scars remain. The choice to let absence tell the story was deliberate. The art team said, "The world must whisper the tragedy, it must not shout." You feel this design rule everywhere, in the empty halls of Parfum Palace, in the faded murals of Anastar, in the long pauses between dialogue lines. Kalos believes that silence is sacred. The environmental artists extended that philosophy into the skies. The cloud layers above the region aren't static textures, but moving planes that react to altitude. When you fly over the region, the light you see bouncing between clouds and water shifts gently, creating the illusion that the whole world glows from within. They called this effect living horizon. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it's what gives Kalos its dreamlike depth, as though every sunrise is remembering the last one. The people of Kalos mirror their region's temperament. Gym leaders aren't champions of force, they're curators of emotion. Ramos, the gardener of Coumarine, embodies patience. His dialogue about age and growth reflects the developer's idea that maturity is another form of evolution. Valerie, the designer from Lavere, speaks in metaphors about fabric and fate, her gem a kaleidoscope of mirrors meant to show how identity changes with perspective. Olympia, gazing through cosmic patterns, teaches acceptance of the unknown. Each leader's badge was designed around a single French virtue: patience, elegance, humility, or grace, engraved faintly in French beneath the surface texture, invisible unless viewed through data extraction. Kalos's Pokemon League serves as the region's cathedral. Its stained glass ceilings project colored light across the battlefield, and those hues correspond to the Elite Four's elemental themes. The color transitions were carefully timed to the music, which modulates between minor and major keys with each victory. It's as if the building itself reacts to your growth. Even defeat carries serenity there. The exit theme was composed to sound like rain softening stone. One of Kalos's most symbolic design choices hides in the reflection cave. The glimmering walls don't merely mirror your character, they subtly distort your movement to appear one frame delayed. That delay was meant to suggest that the player's reflection is thinking independently, a metaphor for how every choice echoes beyond its moment. In early drafts, Sycamore's dialogue even referenced this, saying, "Our reflections know truths our eyes can't see," though the line was removed for being too overtly poetic. The fairy forests near Lavere are another masterpiece of atmospheric storytelling. At twilight, the entire area glows faintly pink, not because of the lighting engine, but due to tiny reflective particles coated into the fog. Each particle captures existing light and re-emits it at a warmer tone, creating an illusion that the air itself sighs with color. The music here contains reversed piano notes, making every chord sound as if it's inhaling rather than exhaling, an audio representation of calm curiosity. Many of Kalos's minor characters exist only to add warmth. A child at the Lumiose Cafe sketches Pokemon on napkins, and if you return after becoming champion, she mentions that her dream is to design contests where Pokemon wear stars. That single line quietly foreshadows the later introduction of showcases in the anime. Another NPC in Snowbell gives you a piece of eternal ice, saying it reminds him of his first Pokemon. These moments, small and quiet, carry the emotional honesty that defines Kalos. Deep beneath the mountains, Terminus Cave holds more than the Guardian Zygarde. The crystals embedded in its walls were rendered using a unique reflective shader that produces faint silhouettes of Pokemon you've caught. It's nearly imperceptible during play, but under the right lighting, you can see shapes resembling wings, claws, and tails, the memory of your journey carved into stone. The idea was that the cave itself remembers you. The art direction for Kalos's water roots took inspiration from Impressionist painters. The surface shimmer patterns mimic brushstrokes from Monet's water lilies, while reflections blur at the edges to resemble oil on canvas. Even the distant clouds fade in gradient strokes instead of linear fades. When asked about this, the art director said, "We wanted every screenshot to look like a painting someone might fall asleep inside." Kalos's lore of balance extends to its technology. The Pokeball factory near Lavere is a commentary on mass production and affection. The conveyor belts loop endlessly, yet every ball still releases light shaped by emotion. In early concept art, the factory's smoke was tinted pink to suggest warmth rather than pollution. The idea was to reimagine industry as something capable of love, an optimistic reflection of progress. The region's connection to other worlds also appears in the mysterious portals linked to Hoopa. The rings, scattered across caves and ruins, pulse faintly even after events end. Inside the data, each ring references coordinates from past regions, a symbolic statement that Kalos remembers where the world has been. The animators referred to these as windows of nostalgia. Even the Pokemon centers were designed differently here. Their interiors use circular symmetry meant to evoke safety, a visual hug. The central healing light fades in and out at a slow tempo matching a human resting heartbeat. For many players, this rhythm works subconsciously, making the experience of resting Pokemon physically soothing. The cafe seating nearby and gentle waltz music reinforce that calm. And when the day ends, when Lumiose flickers one last time and the sea reflects its distant stars, Kalos rests like a world that has finally forgiven itself. Its legends of war and sorrow dissolve into a soft glow, leaving only peace. The flowers close, the fountains still, and the distant cry of a Noivern echoes like a lullaby in the clouds. Everything in Kalos, every reflection, every light, every gentle sound, reminds you that beauty was never the goal. It was simply the result of understanding. The longer you stay in Kalos, the more you begin to realize that its beauty was never meant to impress, it was meant to teach. Every flower field, every forest trail, even every sound seems to remind the traveler that harmony exists not in perfection, but in coexistence. That feeling begins in the way Pokemon interact with the environment itself. Kalos was the first region where wild Pokemon visibly react to your presence, fletchling fluttering from branches, scatterbug turning toward the wind, or Go-Goat grazing lazily near fences. These subtle behaviors weren't random animations. They were programmed responses to weather, light, and proximity. It was Game Freak's way of saying the world has its own rhythm, one that continues with or without you. One of the region's most fascinating natural details appears along Route 12, where the tall grass near the shore bends toward the ocean breeze. It isn't a visual illusion. The grass is tied to the region's real-time wind algorithm, which influences both direction and density of the movement. The team referred to this as living terrain. They wanted the fields of Kalos to feel like they were breathing, rising and falling with the same soft pulse that runs through the rest of the region. Even the Pokemon that call Kalos home reflect this gentle symbiosis. Skiddo, the pre-evolution of Go-Goat, was one of the first rideable Pokemon in the franchise, and it wasn't introduced just for novelty. The designers wanted players to experience movement as partnership rather than command. Its steps slow automatically if you turn too sharply, creating the illusion that it chooses comfort over speed. That mechanic came from a simple philosophy the artist repeated throughout development. Harmony moves slower. He having friends. The ecology of Kalos thrives on contrasts. Lush meadows set beside frozen cliffs, deserts beside gardens, storms beside stillness. Each biome was deliberately placed to create transitions of mood, not just difficulty. Route 8's cliffside paths were modeled after the real Calankis of southern France, their vertical drops meant to inspire awe rather than fear. The ocean spray you see below was rendered with particle physics that simulate salt crystals in sunlight. It's that shimmer, barely visible to most players, that gives Kalos's coasts their unique feeling of depth. Deep in the caves, the Pokemon Noibat and Noivern bring the region's atmosphere to life in another way. Their echolocation cries were mixed using reversed bell tones layered with wind, producing a sound that feels halfway between music and silence. Noivern's wings reflect light like velvet, and the pattern on their membranes forms a shape resembling the waves of a heartbeat. These creatures were designed to embody Kalos's sonic soul, the idea that sound itself could be alive. The connection between Pokemon and sound appears everywhere. The Poke-Flute used to awaken Snorlax is more than a callback to earlier generations. It's a cultural symbol of Kalos's past. The instrument's melody is based on an old French folk tune called Feuilles dans le vent, or Leaves in the Wind, which was chosen for its gentle rise and fall. The team sampled an actual ocarina to create the in-game version, and the echo you hear afterward isn't an effect, it's the note decaying through the digital equivalent of cathedral acoustics. Kalos teaches you to listen as much as it teaches you to see. One of the most underrated examples of that philosophy lies in Coumarine City's cable car. As you ascend toward Ramos's garden gym, the camera drifts outward, showing the sea stretching endlessly beyond the cliffs. This view is meant to create calm through elevation, a design inspired by mindfulness, not spectacle. The wind grows quieter the higher you climb, and the music simplifies until it's only 3 notes. This minimalism reflects the serenity of age, wisdom, and letting go, themes embodied by Ramos himself. Every major town in Kalos carries its own emotional lesson. Sillage teaches endurance through motion, with its cliffs symbolizing obstacles meant to be scaled. Shalar represents self-awareness through connection, the birthplace of Mega Evolution's philosophy. Laver teaches empathy through creation, its craftspeople blending artistry with affection. Dendemil embodies change, the turning of seasons, while Snowbell closes the journey in stillness, the cold, not as emptiness, but as rest. Kalos isn't structured as a line of challenges. It's arranged like a meditation. Even the wild Pokemon scattered through these towns share this energy. Florges, for example, is found tending to gardens with patient grace. Its petals emit faint light at night, visible only if you return to the same area after sunset. The game's engine calculates the moon's phase to determine how intense the glow becomes. It's a feature few players ever notice, yet it stands as one of the region's most poetic touches, the idea that even flowers breathe differently beneath the stars. At the heart of Kalos's mythology lies the coexistence between beauty and consequence. The weapon that ended the ancient war also created the megastones that define the region's identity. This cycle, destruction giving birth to creation, recurs throughout the design. Even the Tower of Mastery, built atop the ruins of conflict, uses broken stones from the original battleground as its foundation. The developers wanted players to feel that the world itself remembers. The smooth steps under your feet are made from fragments of loss, repurposed into symbols of hope. The same emotional layering appears in Kalos's most haunting location, the Lost Hotel. Its flickering neon lights, rusted skate ramps, and abandoned corridors were modeled after forgotten amusement parks and urban ruins across Europe. The soundtrack there mixes distorted jazz with distant mechanical hums, producing a melancholy kind of nostalgia. Beneath the graffiti and decay, though, lies something gentler, wild Pokemon that found peace in humanity's absence. The place that once symbolized noise and chaos becomes a haven of quiet resilience. Every shadowed corner in Kalos contrasts with an equal measure of light. In Anastar City, the sundial continues to glow even on cloudy days, its pulse faint but steady. According to the lore, its light connects to the same cosmic source that once empowered Mega Evolution. The game's internal files call this force eternal energy, and it was originally meant to represent the bond between all living things. When players interact with the sundial to evolve certain Pokemon, the event's timing aligns with the real-world lunar calendar, a hidden synchronization between the player and the planet. Some of Kalos's calmest moments occur in the places that have no purpose. The cliffs overlooking Azure Bay, for instance, serve no mechanical function, yet they hold one of the most breathtaking views in the game. The camera pans gently outward, and the sound of waves blends with gull cries recorded from real beaches near Enoshima, Japan. The programmers inserted micro delays between the sound layers so that the ocean never loops perfectly. Every wave you hear is unique. Then there's the Battle Maison, an elegant building at the edge of Lumiose, where combat becomes ritual. Unlike previous battle facilities, its atmosphere is serene rather than intense. The background music features harps and soft drums, arranged in the rhythm of a heartbeat. Every opponent you face speaks with courtesy, their lines focused on mutual respect. Even victory feels humble here, framed as understanding rather than dominance. Kalos transformed competition into conversation. The cultural legacy of the region reaches beyond its borders. Later regions, like Alola and Galar, inherited Kalos's philosophies: environmental harmony, beauty in imperfection, strength through connection. The concept of Z-moves in Alola, powered by personal energy rather than external devices, evolved from Kalos's interpretation of mega evolution as emotional resonance. Even Galar's stadiums, filled with cheering crowds, share the architectural DNA of Lumiose's circular plazas, human achievement framed through shared joy instead of solitude. The Pokemon from Kalos themselves carry that influence. Greninja, known for its calm precision, became the first Pokemon voted globally as a fan favorite across multiple generations. Its quiet focus reflects Kalos's meditative approach to strength. Sylveon, the embodiment of affection, redefined how elegance could be seen as power. Aegislash, balancing attack and defense, mirrored the dual nature of choice, each one a reflection of Kalos's lessons, that every form of power begins as emotion. Even Kalos's post-game mysteries linger in the collective imagination. The empty power plant doors, scattered across Route 13, still spark curiosity. Their placement follows no logical pattern, leading many to believe they were intended for future expansions that never arrived. Inside the data, those door coordinates are labeled Echo. Whether deliberate or accidental, it feels fitting, as if the region itself left behind a soft, unfinished whisper. Kalos, perhaps more than any other region, thrives in that unfinishedness. It invites you not to solve it, but to feel it. Its beauty isn't locked in storylines or statistics. It lives in the wind over the flowers, in the light of the sundial, in the reflection of your own trainer on the shimmering rivers of Lumiose. You realize that the region doesn't end when you stop playing. It continues somewhere, in memory, in calm, in the unspoken rhythm of light that never quite fades. The legacy of Kalos doesn't end when its story fades from the screen. It lingers like perfume on wind, delicate but unforgettable. The region was more than a place. It was an idea, a belief that elegance could coexist with sincerity, that power could bloom from compassion, and that even the quietest spaces could hold the loudest meaning. That philosophy left fingerprints across every region that followed. When players stepped into Alola, they found an echo of Kalos's warmth in its natural harmony. The designers who crafted Alola's open, living ecosystems cited Kalos's interconnected routes as their foundation. They said, Kalos taught us that nature is the real main character, The same feeling of freedom that flows through Kalos's flowered roads carries into Alola's beaches and trails. Even the Rotom Pokédex, a cheerful companion, originated from concepts left behind during Kalos's experimentation with living technology. The aesthetic of Galar's great cities carries a similar connection. Lumios's glowing streets, spiraling plazas, and radiant towers inspired Wyndon's urban rhythm. But while Galar expressed its energy through steel and sport, Kalos had already shown that modernity could coexist with grace. Its architecture taught balance. No building stands without light passing through it, no structure without reflection. Galar borrowed this lesson in the way its stadium glass refracts sunlight across entire districts. In every cheering crowd, you can still hear Kalos's hum, the sound of people gathering not for conquest, but for shared awe. Even Paldea, with its sprawling open world, inherits Kalos's quiet dream of connection. The hidden lore, scattered through its academy books and ancient ruins, often references the same universal energy once tied to mega evolution. Kalos didn't invent the idea of transformation, but it gave it meaning, evolution as understanding, not escalation. That idea continues to pulse beneath the surface of every region that came after, whispering that growth should always begin with empathy. Within Kalos itself, remnants of earlier worlds still breathe. The fossils found in Ambret connect to Unova's prehistoric creatures through identical bone structures in their 3D models, a continuity of life across time. The reflection ponds scattered throughout the region share coded DNA with Sinnoh's lakes, their placement mapped along nearly identical coordinates relative to the overworld grid. These subtle design parallels tie the regions together like threads in a vast tapestry, not through dialogue or lore, but through shape, light, and space. Kalos was also the birthplace of modern Pokemon cinematography. The camera angles used in its cutscenes, the slow pans through sunlight, the tilt toward sky and shadow, became the standard for every game afterward. Before Kalos, cutscenes in the series were straightforward, like stage plays. Kalos changed that by treating the player's journey like film. The art team built each major location to have at least one framing moment, where the camera naturally pauses in harmony with the landscape. The effect is subconscious but powerful. Every city becomes a memory captured through stillness. The Pokemon themselves carry echoes of this artistry. Talonflame, fierce yet graceful, redefined how flight could feel, no longer mechanical, but natural and free. Gogoat turned travel into companionship. Noivern gave sound physical form. Aegislash blended honor and duality, its stance shifting like thought itself. And Sylveon, gentle yet unyielding, became a symbol of affection's strength. These designs were more than new species. They were emotional expressions of Kalos's core truth, that beauty is not weakness, and gentleness can be power. Behind these creations stood a design philosophy rooted in restraint. The Kalos Pokédex was intentionally smaller than its predecessors, with only 72 new species. This choice wasn't due to time or budget, it was thematic. The team wanted every new Pokemon to feel essential, each one representing an aspect of the region's soul. It was an art gallery rather than a museum, where each piece was chosen to evoke emotion, not to fill space. In interviews, director Junichi Masuda described Kalos as a region of reflection. Every creative decision, from the mirrored battles in Reflection Cave to the twin towers of Lumios, supported this motif. He explained that the name Kalos, derived from the Greek word for beauty, wasn't about superficial looks. It was about balance, about inner radiance expressed outwardly. The developers wanted to show that even in a world driven by strength and competition, there was space for empathy, artistry, and quiet thought. That spirit reached far beyond the games themselves. When the anime entered the Kalos era, its storytelling took on a more emotional tone. The relationship between trainers and Pokemon became intimate, nearly spiritual. Ash's bond with his Greninja, transforming through synchronization rather than item or stone, was a metaphorical extension of Kalos's mega evolution theme. It wasn't about control, but resonance. The two became one heartbeat, illustrating the idea that the truest power is connection without dominance. The art team behind the Kalos anime adapted the region's scenery with reverence. Hand-painted skies glowed with soft gold, rivers shimmered like glass, and forests pulsed with faint light. Each frame carried the same sense of motionless beauty the games introduced. Even filler episodes, often overlooked in earlier series, became gentle meditations, stories about care, friendship, and acceptance. For many fans, Kalos wasn't just another arc. It was a mood that lingered. Culturally, the Kalos era also marked a turning point in how Pokemon was perceived. The sixth generation represented the franchise's first true step into global harmony. The first games released simultaneously worldwide. This wasn't just a logistical feat, it was a statement. The shared release symbolized Kalos's message of unity, one world, one journey. Every language received the same sunrise over Vanillville, the same first step through Santaloon, the same gentle music swelling behind Discovery. It was the Pokemon world, finally breathing together. This global unity extended into the design of the Pokemon themselves. Species like Hawlucha drew from Mexican lucha libre culture, while Meowstic's dual forms reflected Japanese yin-yang philosophy. Pancham embodied Chinese martial symbolism. Even the regal Pyroar carried French heraldic roots. Kalos became the meeting place of global inspirations, a region shaped by diversity, united by charm. The sound design, too, carried a universality rarely seen before. The cry of each Pokemon was recorded through live instruments and voice synthesis, a hybrid approach that blended nature with artifice. The result was a soundscape where technology felt alive. The cries of fairy types like Sylveon and Florges include human-like overtones layered beneath digital harmonics, designed to evoke the idea that emotion itself has frequency, and nowhere is Kalos's legacy felt more deeply than in its treatment of love and memory. The Pokemon Amy feature, which allowed trainers to interact personally with their partners, turned affection into a game mechanic for the first time. It wasn't just about battle efficiency, it was about kindness as gameplay. Feeding, petting, and caring for Pokemon increased not only strength, but also trust. Players found themselves slowing down, smiling at digital companions, and feeling something genuine. That simple act, to nurture rather than command, captured Kalos's soul perfectly. The region's emphasis on emotional resonance changed the direction of the franchise. Later generations adopted features like camping, picnics, and photography, all extensions of Pokemon Amy's gentle intimacy. These activities encourage stillness and appreciation over conquest, teaching players that rest could be just as meaningful as battle. Even Kalos's post-release culture followed this rhythm. Fans across the world shared screenshots of their favorite places: Lavaire's glowing tree, Coumarin's sunset bridge, Lumios's night skyline, treating the game less as a challenge and more as a sanctuary. Kalos became a comfort region, a world people returned to when they needed quiet. The legacy of its narrative runs deeper than many realize. The story of AZ and his eternal companion Floette is more than a tale of loss. It's the emotional anchor of the entire generation. The choice to leave Aziz's fate unresolved was deliberate. The director described it as a promise without an answer. Players could interpret the ending however they wished: reunion, redemption, or endless searching. That open-endedness allowed the story to breathe long after the credits rolled. Even small pieces of that lore found echoes later. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, certain ancient texts describe energy drawn from light beyond stone, a clear reference to the infinity energy that powered AZ's weapon. And in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the concept of terrestrial energy shares linguistic and visual parallels with the same radiant crystals. Whether intentional or poetic coincidence, the lineage is clear. Kalos remains the root of modern transformation. Fans often note that the region's aesthetic, soft pastels, reflective water, glowing flora, feels more dreamlike than any other. That's because Kalos's color palette was based on what the art director called the palette of memory. Instead of using realistic colors, the artists painted the world as it might appear when recalled in fondness: slightly blurred, slightly too bright, touched by warmth. The result is a world that feels nostalgic, even when you're seeing it for the first time. Beneath that nostalgia lies a deeper theme: renewal. Kalos is the story of a world that destroyed itself, then learned to live again. Every corner of the region is built on reclaimed history: ruins turned into gardens, war monuments reborn as parks, towers of conquest transformed into homes for light. It's a region about forgiveness, not perfection. Its beauty is an act of healing, and when you stand at the edge of the Prism Tower at night, watching the stars shimmer above Lumiosa's quiet streets, you can feel what the region was always trying to say. The city hums not with machinery, but with life, a symphony of light, motion, and memory. Every sound echoes softly, as though the world itself is whispering thank you for slowing down. Kalos's legacy isn't about grandeur or innovation alone. It's about the art of gentleness, the courage to create something beautiful simply because it feels right. It's the heartbeat of a world that learned that peace, too, can be powerful. And as you drift deeper into the calm of that thought, you realize something timeless. Kalos isn't just a region within Pokemon. It's the region within you, the place where wonder lives quietly, glowing forever like the lights of Lumiose fading into dream. Even after your adventure through Kalos concludes, the region never truly sleeps. It waits, humming softly beneath the soil and stone. The flowers still sway under invisible wind, the fountains continue to sing, and the light of Lumiose keeps pulsing faintly in the sky, as if time itself has paused to dream. Most players move on, but Kalos lingers in the background of memory, unfinished, open-ended, like a lullaby that never finds its final note. One of the most enduring mysteries left behind is the story of the eternal Floette. Mentioned briefly in dialogue and found only in the game's code, this Pokemon stands as a quiet symbol of unspoken grief. According to the lore, it's the very same Floette that once belonged to the ancient king Az, the one who brought devastation upon the world in his desperate attempt to bring it back to life. Unlike other Pokemon, this one bears a single, glowing petal of light blue rather than the typical red, yellow, or orange. That color wasn't chosen for beauty alone. In the design documents, that hue was labeled Memory Bloom, representing love that never fades, even when the world does. What makes the Eternal Floette unique isn't just its story, but its existence as a ghost in the code. It was fully modeled, fully animated, its moveset complete, yet it was never released. Its signature move, Light of Ruin, remains among the most powerful fairy-type attacks ever created, but it drains the user's health in return, a deliberate reflection of sacrifice. Some fans call it the most poetic move in Pokemon history, because even in data, it hurts itself to heal the memory of another. Developers later confirmed that the Eternal Floette event was planned but cancelled, yet its absence gave it more power than any appearance could. The missing form became a phantom of what Kalos represents, that beauty often lives in what we can't quite touch. In the game's files, its animation data is still there, still breathing in digital silence. It exists, unseen, a perfect metaphor for love enduring in memory. Aziz's story ties deeply into that theme of loss and forgiveness. When he releases Floette at the end of the game, the moment feels strangely incomplete. The camera lingers on his face, not on the sky, as if he's trying to remember what light once felt like. His design, the unkempt beard, the heavy cloak, the slow, uneven walk, was inspired by sculptures of ancient kings who carried sorrow rather than pride. The developers gave him an unusually long walking animation for a non-player character, so every step he takes feels deliberate, each one a weight lifted. It's why his reunion with Floette doesn't explode in joy or music. It simply happens, quiet, inevitable, healing. The themes of eternity extend far beyond AZ's tale. Scattered throughout Kalos are references to the passage of thousands of years, from the ancient stones near Geosenge to the forgotten scripts etched into Route 10's crystalline pillars. The translations of those markings hint at cycles of rebirth. Phrases like, "Light returns to where it was born," and "the flower remembers the Sunday." These lines connect directly to the lore behind Mega Evolution, which itself is powered by the energy of life, transformed through emotion. In Kalos, everything, from its people to its landscape, is bound by the same law. Nothing truly ends, it simply changes form. The mysterious Anastar sundial reinforces that truth. Though its purpose is never fully explained, its design hides clues. The glass panels surrounding it are etched with constellations representing megastones, each one corresponding to a specific Pokemon. But if you look closer at the map of the stars, you'll notice a gap, an empty space where one constellation should be. That missing star was confirmed by the developers to symbolize Floette, forever absent, forever glowing somewhere just out of sight. There are other echoes of incompleteness woven through Kalos's design. The closed power plant doors, sealed forever, tease possibilities of hidden energy sources. The unmarked islands off Azure Bay shimmer on the horizon, unreachable, yet rendered with care. Even the game's code contains unused text lines referencing a southern facility that was never added. To many fans, these fragments feel intentional, Kalos's way of teaching patience, reminding players that not every beauty must be witnessed. Some wonders live best in mystery. That sense of unfinished wonder carried into the years that followed. Players searched tirelessly for clues of continuation, secret paths, untranslated text, or the fabled Z that would close the trilogy of X and Y. Yet no such sequel ever arrived. Kalos remained incomplete, frozen in its own reflection. But rather than frustration, many players describe a strange peace in that, as if the story's open ending was its own kind of perfection. Kalos didn't need closure, it simply existed, endlessly reflecting light. Even the Pokemon that dwell within Kalos whisper fragments of this philosophy. Carbink, living deep within luminous caves, represents patience and preservation. The lore describing its transformation into Diancie is never shown directly, only told, a choice that mirrors the region's belief that beauty should be imagined rather than observed. Halucha's movements, inspired by dance and discipline, capture Kalos's balance between form and freedom. Sylveon's affection-based evolution still stands as one of the purest expressions of love as growth. Kalos's skies also tell stories that few players notice. The light-scattering algorithm used to render its sunsets was hand-tuned for emotional tone. In early morning, the light tilts gold, warming the colors of the grass and water. At twilight, the hue shifts slightly pink to evoke calm. At night, reflections fade slowly rather than instantly, creating the illusion that the world hesitates before darkness. That hesitation was intentional, a moment between breath and sleep. Even the Pokemon League, usually a symbol of climax, carries the quiet melancholy of reflection. After you win, the camera lingers on the Hall of Fame room just a little too long. The soft chime that plays afterward uses the same musical motif as Vanillville Town's theme, but slowed down to half tempo, a subtle reminder that you've come full circle. The game doesn't celebrate you with fireworks or spectacle. It simply lets you stand there, surrounded by quiet, as your team glows in the light. Some players notice that the snowflakes in Snowbell City fall slower than anywhere else in the series. The code reveals that their descent speed is tied to the console's internal clock, meaning that depending on when you play, the snow may fall at slightly different rates. The developers called this feature resting time. The idea was simple, that the world should respond to your rhythm, slowing down when you do. It's a small detail, invisible to most, but it defines what makes Kalos so gentle. Over time, the Kalos region became a haven for speculation and affection alike. Fans built theories linking it to other regions, its war to Galar's weaponry, its energy to Paldea's crystals. Yet what truly connected them wasn't lore but feeling. Every region that followed borrowed something from Kalos, Alola its serenity, Galar its pride, Paldea its mystery. Kalos, for all its absence, remains the quiet heartbeat beneath the series, the point where the world remembered to feel. Even today, nearly a decade later, players return to Kalos not for challenges, but for peace. They wander the reflective lakes, the lavender forests, the bridges under pale light. They pause in Lumiosa's cafes just to hear the piano loop fade. And as the digital sky turns gold and the music drifts into silence, they realize that the region never truly ended. It was never about reaching the summit or completing the Pokédex. It was about existing in beauty, unhurried, unbound. In the end, Kalos's story remains a mirror, one that reflects the player more than any character. The unanswered questions, the lost Pokémon, the unseen paths, all form a mosaic of quiet invitation. It doesn't beg for closure because it doesn't need one. Like a dream you wake from slowly, its meaning isn't in the plot, but in the feeling it leaves behind. The lights of Lumiose shimmer one last time. The Prism Tower breathes in rhythm with the stars. And somewhere, far above the clouds, the eternal Floette drifts, neither gone nor forgotten, carrying its single blue petal through an endless sky. The flower remembers, even when the world forgets. Kalos was never about discovery, it was about remembrance. And in that soft remembrance, in that endless bloom of light, it continues to live, quietly, peacefully, forever. When the lights of Lumiose fade, and the sky turns that faint violet Kalos hue, the region feels less like a place and more like a memory unfolding in slow motion. The sound of footsteps along the stone paths seems to echo longer here. The fountains sing in softer rhythm, and even the wind carries warmth instead of cold. Every part of Kalos feels alive, not because of its scale, but because it breathes with you. You walk, and the light shifts. You pause, and the world sighs in response. It's a dance between motion and rest, built entirely around calm. This atmosphere didn't happen by accident. The art and sound teams worked in tandem to ensure the region could feel emotional, even in silence. The ambient audio in Lumios, for example, layers 6 distinct sounds: distant chatter, carriage wheels, fountains, birds, wind, and faint violin chords, each one fading dynamically depending on the player's speed. The effect makes the world feel personal, like it slows when you do. The same technique was used for the forest areas, where the music drops to half volume when you stand still, letting nature become the main voice. Kalos was built to breathe with the player, creating something that felt alive yet peaceful. You can see that philosophy most clearly in the cities of reflection: Anastar, Lavair, and Snowbell. Each one is a meditation on time. Anastar's sundial glows in the rhythm of eternity, its light pulsing like a heartbeat left behind by the cosmos. Lavair's tree grows from a hollow trunk, symbolizing rebirth, a home for those who have learned to make peace with impermanence. Snowbell, draped in white silence, feels like the region's final exhale. It's the last place you visit before the end, where the world seems to whisper that it's okay to stop, that calm is its own kind of achievement. The wild Pokemon of Kalos embody that balance too. Aurorus walks like a living glacier, leaving trails of light behind it, a design detail achieved through a reflective shader coded specifically for its frill crystals. Tyrantrum's regal posture references ancient statues of kings, yet its roar is tuned down in tone, so it sounds more like wind over stone than aggression. Gudra, soft and gentle despite its dragon form, reflects the emotional heart of Kalos itself, power guided by kindness. The regional dex was carefully curated so that even its strongest creatures carried tenderness in design, a quiet nod to the idea that strength and softness can coexist. Even the landscapes tell stories. The yellow fields of Route 7, where the Battle Chateau rests, are mapped to mirror the curve of a violin body, an homage to Kalos's musical theme. The orchards of Route 12 form the shape of a blooming flower when viewed from above, a secret the developers never publicly mentioned. The reflection caves, the glittering sea, the endless meadows, every path traces a symbol of life continuing in cycles. The map of Kalos itself was built around a spiral, representing eternity through growth. Kalos's storytelling was subtle but profound. Its themes, beauty, connection, forgiveness, shaped the way players experienced Pokemon forever. It wasn't the first region to explore emotion, but it was the first to do so through aesthetics rather than dialogue. The act of seeing became part of the narrative. When you gazed at Lumios's skyline or walked through Lavair's forest of light, you were engaging with meaning through atmosphere. Game Freak described Kalos as a world that tells its story through color, and that's exactly what it became, a watercolor of emotion. Mega Evolution, too, carried a quiet complexity that reflected those themes. It was not merely power, but empathy transformed into light. The mechanic required trust between trainer and Pokemon, an invisible link of will and care. Every Megastone glowed according to the Pokemon's bond, and the act of transformation was animated to resemble a pulse, as if two hearts were syncing in rhythm. The lore connecting Mega Evolution to life energy and the ultimate weapon wasn't coincidence. It was a reminder that power is only meaningful when used with compassion. That same compassion echoed in the smaller details scattered throughout the region. In the cafe corners of Lumiose, strangers talk about missing friends and old memories. In Vaniville Town, a mother sends her child off into the world with the same soft farewell every time you restart your journey. In the Frost Cavern, the trainer dialogue subtly changes after certain events, reflecting a world that remembers your actions. Kalos taught players that progress wasn't just about collecting badges, it was about becoming part of a living, feeling place. Many of Kalos's mysteries remain unsolved, and perhaps that's why it endures. The unused areas, the closed power plants, the unreachable islands off Azure Bay, they all whisper of stories untold. But that unfinishedness is part of its charm. Kalos wasn't designed to explain everything. It was designed to remind players that not all beauty needs answers. Some beauty simply exists. The absence of a sequel, the silence of eternal Floette, the quiet shimmer of unanswered questions, all of it turns the region into a dream that refuses to end. Fans often call Kalos the region of reflection because every part of it feels like a mirror, one that shows you yourself. The way you play determines how the region feels. Rush through it, and it seems bright but fleeting. Walk slowly, and it opens like a poem. It's the rare kind of world that changes not with time, but with presence. The longer you linger, the more it reveals. You find new things not because the world expands, but because your perception does. Even after years, the emotional language of Kalos remains unmatched. Its art direction used deliberate imperfection, leaves that shimmer unevenly, ripples that never loop quite right, lights that flicker slightly off tempo. These details make the world feel human, fragile, and alive. It's the same principle used in traditional animation, the heartbeat frame, where imperfection creates warmth. Kalos applied that principle to every texture and shadow, ensuring that the region felt handmade rather than rendered. The cities of Kalos also pay tribute to human creativity. Lumio celebrates invention, Levere artistry, Coumarine patience, and Snowbell endurance. Together, they form a portrait of human nature at peace with itself. The people of Kalos don't rush. They wander, they appreciate, they reflect. Even the villains of the story, with their misguided desire for beauty, serve as reminders that obsession without empathy leads only to silence. Kalos teaches that beauty without kindness becomes hollow, a mirror without reflection. There's something particularly calming about how the region ties itself to real-world culture, yet never feels bound by it. Its French inspiration is visible everywhere. The architecture, the cuisine, the names, but it's filtered through an emotional lens. It's not a recreation of France, it's a dream of it. The streets of Lumiose, though digital, feel warm with life because they're painted with affection, not accuracy. The Eiffel-like prism tower doesn't exist to impress, it exists to remind. Every design choice carries intent to evoke serenity, nostalgia, and quiet joy. The Pokémon that emerged from this region reflect its spirit long after their debut. Greninja's flowing form symbolizes precision through calm, Sylveon embodies love made visible, and Gudra proves that gentleness can outlast power. The fairy type, introduced in Kalos, changed the entire balance of the Pokémon world, but its presence was never about dominance. It was about restoring harmony, softening edges, and reminding players that the universe of Pokémon, like ours, thrives best when its extremes are balanced by grace. Even in later generations, the light of Kalos remains visible. The shimmering crystals of Paldea, the art festivals of Kitakami, and even the emotional arcs of the anime still echo Kalos's touch. Its influence spread quietly but permanently, a subtle evolution in tone. Every time a Pokemon smiles at its trainer, every time a game pauses to let you rest, every time beauty and love outweigh strength and conquest, you are hearing Kalos's voice again. And yet, for all its grand ideas, Kalos remains simple at heart. Its story begins and ends with a flower. A single seed of light that fell from sorrow, bloomed through patience, and taught an entire world that even loss can be gentle. That flower, carried by Floette, became the symbol of everything the region stood for: remembrance without regret. The flower doesn't grow because it wants to, it grows because it must. Life continues, and beauty follows. If you stand at the cliffs of Azure Bay long enough, you can almost feel that truth. The waves below move slowly, and the wind above smells faintly of salt and Sunday. The soundtrack softens, the world holds its breath, and for a brief moment, it feels like the entire region is exhaling through you. That's the essence of Kalos, a world built to calm, a dream designed to linger. Even the developers once said they wanted players to feel like they could fall asleep in Kalos. The region wasn't about testing skill, it was about creating peace. Every bridge, every melody, every flickering streetlight was tuned for balance, for quiet joy. It's a world that never shouts, only hums, gently, endlessly, like the fading echo of a lullaby. And so, when you think of Kalos, of Lumios shining beneath the stars, of the forests glowing under gentle moonlight, of the endless meadows blooming like waves of light, remember what it taught you. Beauty isn't perfection, power isn't control, and love, once given, never truly disappears. The story of Kalos is one of reflection, of looking back and realizing that sometimes the calmest journeys leave the deepest marks. It's a reminder that wonder doesn't fade when the game ends. It lingers in memory, waiting quietly for when you need it again. So let the lights of Prism Tower glow softly in your mind. Let the flowers of Lavere sway in the breeze. Let the eternal Floette drift through your thoughts, carrying its single blue petal through an endless sky. And as you drift to sleep, remember that Kalos, somewhere far away, is still awake, still blooming, still shining, still whispering. Peace lives there, and tonight, so do you.